So how many of you forgot that today was St. Patrick's Day? Have you been pinched? I have. I totally forgot that it was St. Patrick's Day. Which is not, I mean, if you're going to forget a holiday, this is not a bad one. There are worse holidays to forget. Let me name one for you. Valentine's Day. Right? Right? Valentine's Day. It's an odd holiday, I think. And it's a holiday just fraught with peril, really, especially for guys, right? It just is. Especially if you're starting out in a relationship, you don't know, you want to give a lot, you want to do something big, you know, to prove your love, and then it might not be enough, it has to be just right, and then especially the first few years, but then as years go on, and you've been married a long time, you know, here's what it is for guys. I'll tell you, I'll just let you know a secret. Guys, I'm right here. You listen. Here's what it is for guys. What's the least I can get away with and not get in trouble? You know, am I right? What's the least I can do and not get in trouble? Like, I wonder what Hy-Vee has on the way home. All right? Yeah, it gets like that. And I think it is, you know, and luckily for us, you know, our love, after we've been married, Jill and I are married 21 years now, it's, you know, it's not, our love doesn't depend on what I give her or she gives me for Valentine's Day. We're way beyond that, right? So thankfully for that. But it's important to remember the question I really have about Valentine's Day, and it does, I promise you it will tie in a moment to the lesson, but the question is that any way to treat somebody that we love? Like, what's the least I can get away with? You know? What's the least I can do and not get in trouble? Is that any way to treat somebody who is our beloved? And yet sometimes in our relationships, that's kind of what we fall into. Right? So, I want to know what it was like for you in your life to show extravagant love. That's really what's going on today. I want to tell you a couple of stories. My daughter, Leah, you all have the blue box for UTO, right? You all know what that is? So United Thank Offering is a box that you make and you get and you make and you take it home with you, and at the beginning of Lent, and then during Lent you put coins in there. At the end of Lent you bring it in and you put it in the offering and it goes to the national church, and millions of dollars are raised that year. And we, in fact, as a parish, have received some of those gifts over the years. So please be generous with UTO. Well, anyway, so the first Sunday I took this box home, and I'm going to teach Leah, my daughter, who's 14, adopted, you know, and special needs. I'm going to teach her about generosity and UTO, what that's all about. So I go up to my bedroom and in my dresser, and I have my coin. Everybody has coins there, right? Where you take out your change, you put it in there. So I have all my coins there, and I say, Leah, we're going to take my money here and we're going to put it in this box. We're going to give it away. It'll go away to somebody else. So great, no problem. So we take all my change, quarters, dimes, you know, all of that, and tink, 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 it all goes in. She's having a blast. She loves it. Okay. Now, I say, now you go to your room and get some money, right? Now, I'll tell you one thing about adopted kids, orphans. I'll tell you one thing. They really get the idea of who owns what, because they have had so little. And Leah can't even make change. Truly, you give her $1 and say it's worth 50 cents, she wouldn't know how to give you change. But she knew this. I said, you go get some of your money from your piggy bank and bring it down and we'll give that away. Nope. I said, yes, no. We had this big fight. Finally, I win, and she says, okay. And she goes upstairs. She's mad about it, but she goes upstairs, and she comes down, and honest to goodness, this is what she did. She hands it out like this. She opens her hand. You know what's in it? A penny. That's a true story. A penny. So we're still learning about generosity in my house. Right? It's a beginning, I would say. Yes. Is it the best we can give? That's really the question. Shouldn't we give to those that we love the best that we have? You know, today we get the story of Mary and Martha and Lazarus. So they're having dinner with Jesus. And he's on his way to Jerusalem where he will be crucified. And it's probably one of the last times he's going to be around his beloved friends, his dear, dear friends. And so they're together and they're lying down, which is what they did when they ate. They reclined at meal. And Mary cracks open a perfume jar. Of a pound of pure nard. It's the best perfume you can get, right? And it's worth 1 year's wages. That's how much it's worth. And she breaks it open, and she puts it on him, on his feet, right? And of course Judas gets mad because Judas is like, hey, that's wasteful. What are we doing here? You know, we could have used that money. And Jesus rebukes Judas and says, look, she's doing what she's supposed to be doing. A year's wages. Can you imagine giving anybody something worth a year's wages? Would you give your own kid? I mean, really, would you give anybody anything that extravagant? That's what it's about today. It's about giving extravagantly. And why? Because that's what God did to us. I mean, in Jesus, God was present, fully present, yeah? And came to live and walk and minister among us, and ultimately was crucified by us, and hung on the cross and died, and was resurrected so that we might know God. What a generous gift, right? Extravagant gift, yes? So the idea is, how do we respond to someone like God that we're in love with? What it was like in the first century. This is what it's about. The whole text today is about what it's like to be a disciple in the first century. I've been talking every week now for 5 weeks about discipleship. I'm almost done, I promise you. Next week we'll start on something else, okay? But discipleship, it's been all about how do you follow Christ authentically? What are you supposed to do to be a disciple? Well, this is how you're a disciple in the first century. You're extravagant in what you do for God, for each other, and for the world. Extravagant giving, right? Follow me, he says. He says, they say, what can we do for you? And he says, feed my sheep. What can we do for you? Love my flock, right? All that. And they did. Even to the point where many of them ended up martyred, crucified, or killed horrendously, right? Extravagant giving. Okay. What's it like to give extravagantly in the 21st century? Do you think? What do you think it's like? The image I have is of our hearts, like wide open, like something like this. Now, have you ever had somebody approach you like this? Like, oh, right? Now, if it's an adult, you kind of go like, okay, stop, right? Not yet. We don't know each other that well yet, right? Get away. You know, even at the passing of the peace, what do? Hi. Not yet. Maybe the people you really know, right? Or the fist bump or whatever. But the idea, I think, is this. Have you ever seen a child run up to you? How does it feel when a child does that to you? You're like, oh. Doesn't even have to be your child or grandchild. Just any child. I was saying, I really have the blessing of getting to know all of your kids. And they come running up to me, Father Mark, and they give me a hug, right? It's a blessing. You have that in your life. We're supposed to be like children, aren't we? To enter the kingdom. Isn't that what Jesus says? Nobody can get into the kingdom unless you come as a child. How's that? It's like love. It's like abandonment. It's like extravagant love. Opening your heart. So this is my image. If we're going to be extravagant disciples in the 21st century, we're going out to the world going, come on, come here, right? Come here. And the world's going to go, too much too soon, right? The world's going to go, take a step back. But that doesn't mean that we're supposed to shut down. We're supposed to be out there like this, right? Anybody have Netflix? I have Netflix. We just got it. We love it. It's awesome. We're like watching all of these documentaries, right? They're so cool. Well, the one we watched last week was Happy. It was a movie that was out in the theaters, but it's on Netflix. And I highly, highly recommend it to you. Happy is the name of it. And what they did is they went out and they looked at scientific evidence for what makes a person happy. Like we spent a lot of time trying to figure out what makes us unhappy, but what they found was interesting about that. They said only 10% of the things that happen to you, the amount of happiness you have is only related, the amount that's related to things that happen to you is only 10%. I didn't say that very elegantly, but what I'm trying to say is, if you look at how happy you are, only 10% of your happiness comes from things that happen to you, or unhappiness. 50% is genetically wired. You're genetically wired to be more or less happy than the average person. 10% are things that happen to you. 40%, those are things that you can do. The choices that you can make to be happy. And they tell a story of lots of different people. They interview a lot of people in this movie. But the one that really struck me was a guy who was a lawyer in England. He's in his 40s. And he goes to visit Calcutta. And goes to one of the homes that Mother Teresa set up for the poorest of the poor. And he goes to serve there for a while. And they show him working there. And they do nothing by, there's no mechanical things there. There are no dishwashers and washing. They do everything by hand. And so he goes around and he washes their beds. And he washes their dishes. and he feeds them by hand, because these are people that society has cast off. There's nothing for them. If they don't go here, they're literally in the street or in the sewer, right? There's nothing for them. So he's feeding them by hand. These people can't feed themselves. He's doing everything that he can do to make their lives just a little bit better. Anyway, the point of his story is that he's given up his life. He's given up his life in England, and this is what he's going to do for the rest of his life. And because he says, I am happier now than I have ever been. I'm the happiest I have ever been, and I can't imagine doing anything else because it brings me such happiness. And I think that's the point I want to make today, is that when we embrace this idea of being extravagant with our love, that it brings us the happiness we need, and it serves God in the way that disciples in the 21st century are supposed to serve God. And I want to just have you today consider how you might respond to God's extravagant gift that was given freely, that we don't deserve, but that is so wonderful, the gift of Jesus Christ. How will we respond authentically and extravagantly as disciples? That's my question.